Hey y'all, it's Courtney with Shopify, Senior Product Manager on our Markets and Catalogs teams. Excited to tell you a little bit more about Markets 101. So, all that you need to know about the new Markets experience that launched with summer editions. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. We'll spend some time talking about why, the background of how we got to the new Markets experience. Of course, we'll do a demo, making sure you have the ability to see the new features. We'll talk through some of the key platform concepts, and then we'll wrap up diving into some more advanced details so that as you're interacting either with merchants or building some new apps, you have all of this information available to you. So, why did we even get into the new Markets experience, and what do we mean when we talk about being beyond cross-border? Well, we know that our merchants are continuing to expand, working with new different types of customer audiences. And when we think about markets, it's not just international anymore. It could be interacting with your B2B or wholesale merchant or wholesale buyers. You might have people that are working with you and that you're buying in person from utilizing Shopify POS. And so we want to make sure that not only is it really easy for you to expand into those markets, we want you to be able to really simply customize and deliver tailored buying experiences for each of those different audiences, because we know personalization equals results when we're looking to get people either in the door or completing their transactions online. It's also critical that you have an easy to use view of that different business expansion. So understanding how you've got different experiences configured, again, whether it be for your international buyers, wholesale buyers, POS, and in future, many different types of audiences that you might segment around. So, what are some things that you should think about as partners? Well, first, the new markets experience results in API changes. So, what could those changes look like? Well, before, markets used to have one, only one, and always one catalog. Moving forward, a market might have multiple catalogs or no catalogs. So, that's something that we want to make sure any of our apps interacting with the pricing capabilities are aware of. Another big change is that a country previously could only exist in one market. Now it could be in many. Web presence can now be null. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can get there later on, but that is a scenario that any apps that are working need to be aware of. And then another big piece is that we're being really intentional with this rollout to make sure that merchants have the best experience with you as their partners. So merchants that have apps that aren't updated yet aren't going to get the new markets, because we want to make sure both you and merchants have the best interactions with these new features. So a couple of things to think about. The new markets is available for everyone. It's on all of our plans, but the customizations will vary by plan. For example, having access to themes or B2B is based off of different plan levels. So let's dive into what are new markets. So a big piece to think about is that new markets has the concept of a market's home. So this central index really giving you access to view all of those key expansion points. We also have new types of markets. So we talked about different audiences that we're engaging with. So you'll see new types such as B2B markets or retail markets that allow you to expand in different ways, rather than how we previously had, where when you think about retail, it was generally one country, one price that matched your online price, or B2B, it was one company location that you were working with having unique pricing. And then we also have additional tooling to make it really easy for you to understand and validate that you've configured the system in the way you intended, to make sure you're getting the right output for those customized buying experiences. Now we're going to jump into the fun part, which is a quick demo where we'll make sure we pause and point out different features of the platform. Now, market creation. What is this? This is really when you think about markets, they're a if-then statement, and market creation is your if of that if-then. So what you have the ability to do is utilize a new condition picker to decide who do you actually want to target when you are creating this market. What audience do you want to focus on? We've, again, got those new market types. So in addition, you have regions, which were historically your international markets. We have B2B markets, which are going to be your wholesale selling. And then coming soon are going to be POS location markets that allow you to really tailor your in-person transactions. When we talk about tailoring, though, a key piece of this, let's continue our setup from France. A key piece of this is actually tailoring the customizations themselves. So here, maybe I've selected France, and you'll notice I get a piece here after I've made this selection is that customizations are going to be grouped into inherited and actual customizations that I've made on this market itself. And so when we talk about inheritance in a little bit, you'll see here, this is a key piece where you have the ability to just configure those customizations at the granularity that you need to. Now, a big piece to think about is that every customization is unique. So when we look here at currency, for example, this allows us to configure things like not only what currency or what presentment currency I want my buyers to be transacting in, I also have the ability to configure price rounding and my exchange rates. These are going to be unique from my other customizations though that I'm configuring because they're based on a specific business concept or need that I'm looking to make the decisions around. So let's talk about additional customizations. One thing that you're going to call out as you're interacting with customizations as a whole is you'll notice that once we hit save, that customization is going to move from purple to gray. So there are smart recommendations that are available to you throughout the market's interactions so that it's really easy for you to have kind of a standard or best practice flow. Of course, all of those you can override to be very specific to the experiences you want to define for your buyers. Now, we talked about customizations being unique to a business concept. Well, for currency, we were defining what currency do I want my buyers transacting in? We have additional customizations like the catalog that allow you to define what pricing do I want to make available to my buyer. So, do I maybe have some adjustments for France that I need to incorporate? Do I have some fixed price overrides for key products that I want to highlight in this market? Another key feature here is the market graph view. So you are configuring these different interactions with different audiences, and we want to make it really easy for you to understand what customizations you have set, along with how they interact with each other. So the graph view gives you that capability to really have that holistic view of your business, the relationships of one market to another. And then we also have view as. So again, going back to, well, every customization is independent. I want to know how these different customizations are going to interact with each other. So here we can go in, we can say, hey, I actually want to view what my France configuration is. It's going to show you exactly what customizations are going to apply to your France buyers, as well as any overrides that maybe you have configured. So you can see here, if I'm going from Canada to France, my currency is overridden, and the France catalog is what's actually going to be available to these buyers. So, really, what we're working on is making it easy for you to understand and validate those configurations, which we want to make a common concept throughout the admin. So, you can see here, view as continues throughout different interactions. So, when we go from markets into our product index, now I want to validate more. I want to go to another level of detail. I want to actually see not just what are the catalogs that are going to apply, so what customizations are applied to France. I want to see what are the actual products that are going to get published for France. What are the prices that are going to get displayed for my France buyers? And so you can see this view as preview capability is going to be carried out as you interact with different aspects of the admin. Let's dig into the platform itself. So it is in essence, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, an if-then statement. And the ifs are our markets, the thens are our customizations, and we'll talk a little bit more about what this looks like. But conceptually, when we're talking about the if, it's basically the collection of conditions that define our buyer. The current market types that we have today are going to be regional markets. So when we look at different international or cross-border selling activities, B2B, which are going to be your wholesale, and then coming soon, we're going to have retail markets available as well. Within those different types, we have different ways of configuring them as well. And those conditionals are in a couple of different ways. So I can say in the US, so I have an explicit definition. I also can utilize conditionals that are kind of like a wild card structure. So I want all companies in Canada. I want all point of sale locations in Canada. And that gives me the ability to be as specific or as granular as I'm looking to be. Now, you might, in many situations, have a buyer fall into multiple markets. So a buyer could actually be based in Canada, but they're also a B2B buyer. And so what we have to do is identify what the priority of those markets are. And so we utilize kind of a priority order to let us define that hierarchy. And so what we say is the more we know about you, the higher the priority or the higher in that hierarchy that market is going to be placed. So with B2B, we know you're logged in. So we know who you are. We know who you're buying on behalf of. So we know way more information about you. If you're buying at a retail location, you're actually physically in front of us. So we know at a physical place that you are purchasing. And so then the lowest priority in our order is going to be those regional markets, because really what we're pulling from here is just like IP details and locating you based off of where you're logging in from. And so we utilize this most specific rule to help us prioritize which markets you're matching. There's also going to be a couple of different scenarios where you might have quote unquote ties. So again, we talked previously about I have these wild card markets where it's all company locations in Canada. Well, those are going to be less specific than going in and creating a market where you've hand selected 5 specific company locations. And then we also work to always respect how different geographies are related to each other, right? So if you were to create a North America market and Canada is a subset of North America, is another aspect of specificity. So when we're looking at the different markets that you're going to match into, the way we map out at the platform level is we leverage the most specific rule to rank markets in terms of most specific to least specific. And we'll talk a little bit more in just a moment about how that then gets leveraged by our customizations. But we use this information to create a prioritized list. So let's talk through an example of market qualification. I have a B2B buyer who is shopping in Canada. So they represent a Canadian company location. They're buying on their behalf. So let's talk through. They come to my storefront. They log in. Well, I know that they're a B2B buyer. I'm going to go say, well, which markets does this B2B buyer qualify for? And then I'm going to sort that list by most specific. So I'm going to match to B2B Canada and Canada. And then I'm going to put together this markets list at the platform level that says B2B Canada is more specific to Canada. This buyer matches both of them. So quick practice round. Let's say I have an American B2B customer. When they log in, what are the markets that we're going to match to? Well, we're going to match to B2B US. We're going to match to all B2B as the next most specific. The next most specific after that is going to be our USA market. And then USA is a subset of North America. So North America is the least specific of the markets that that buyer matches to. Now, that list, that's the if. So these are the markets. So if these markets match, that list of markets then has to apply to your customizations, which are the then part of our if then statement. So how do these customizations kind of work conceptually? Basically, what we want to make sure we remember is each customization gets that prioritized list and decides how they're going to consume and leverage it. Because each customization operates a little bit differently based off of the business concept it's working to support or the experience it's working to deliver. So for currency, between my B2B Canada and Canada markets, I'm going to display my Canadian dollar. For catalogs, the B2B Canada's catalogs are going to be most specific. So those are the ones I'm going to reference. I'm going to determine if I want to collect and show taxes as separate line items, or do I want those grouped together? And that list of markets based off the customizations and how they are defined lets us know which customization is going to be considered. Now, there's a number of customizations. We've talked a lot about currency and catalogs, but you also have business entities. So if you're operating in multiple countries, you can leverage unique business entities to manage your business. We chatted about catalogs and currency. You also have tools such as languages and content. So if you want to utilize translations, if you want to customize content for your wholesale buyers versus your D2C buyers, you have unique themes. Big key point here is you have theme customizations by market. And we'll talk a little bit more there in a few moments about some of the considerations when interacting with themes. And you also have unique web presences. So the ability to have unique domains and languages based off of the market that the buyer is most specific to or referenced in. Now, there are a couple of topics I mentioned that we're going to talk about later on in our presentation, and now we're here. So one of the customizations we want to talk about in detail are catalogs, because they have a little bit of a unique resolution, right? I can define for my France market, I want them to leverage the euros as the currency or that presentment currency for my buyers. Well, catalogs isn't necessarily just a one-to-one. It functions a little bit differently. And so let's dig in on kind of a key example here. So let's say I have a visitor that is B2B and they are assigned to, let's say, we have Toronto Eaton Center, but let's say they're assigned to my Walmart HQ market. Now, something to think through is catalog customizations apply based off of the most specific market type. So fun facts. We mentioned earlier, catalogs used to be one and only one. Now catalogs can be none. I could have 0 catalogs assigned to a market, or I could have many. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure we are understanding and assigning the offer to the buyer that you are intending to create. So once you have a B2B market with a catalog, that B2B market becomes our most specific market type. And so we disregard the catalogs assigned to any other markets. So just kind of visually here, what you're seeing, all of a sudden, we aren't even looking at Canada or the US catalogs. Now, we take those catalogs and what we are going to do is we're going to union them. So we're going to say, okay, give me all of the products in any catalog assigned to these B2B markets that match this buyer context so that you can build product offers to be as specific as you want them to be for an audience. So again, for example, maybe you have unique products that you want available to all of your B2B buyers in Canada, but there's some additional products that you make available just to these Walmart HQ buyers. So now we've got our list of products that we include. So we've got A, B, C, D, and F. Well, taking a look at product C, it's actually included in both of our catalogs. And so this is where we pull in that rule of specificity again. So we look and we say, okay, well, which market is most specific? If we go back up, we follow the same rules as we did with our markets previously, which is we said, okay, well, a market of specific company locations is more specific than a wildcard market of all company locations. So in this scenario, we would take the most specific price, meaning the Walmart HQ price is what's going to get resolved. If in a scenario they were the same level of specificity, we would solve that tie by just taking the lowest price. So conceptually, catalogs are a little bit different in how they resolve, but we continue to leverage specific price as we continue to leverage the most specific market type to determine what catalogs we look at. We leverage the most specific market of that market type to determine the price, and we deliver all products across all those catalogs. Now, the next thing to spotlight is themes. So we made a mention that you have theme customizations. An important caveat is this is theme customization. So you still only have one theme per shop. Themes also have a unique resolution approach, though, because we have this kind of subset capability, right? I can have a country in multiple markets. I can have a buyer match multiple markets. And so the way the system is going to work is when the first edit occurs, a theme is made a child of a single parent chosen from that market graph. And it's a specific parent. So just again, like what you can see here is we've made an edit to Canada or to B2B Canada. It is a child of all B2B because you can have that multiple membership. With theme edits, you'll have one parent and one parent only. Now, let's get into even more advanced details to chat through. Backup region. Prior, we had this concept of a primary market. Well, moving forward, a region or country can exist in multiple markets. And so instead of a primary market, we let you inform and style the system. Well, what's the backup region or country that I want you to utilize when a buyer doesn't match any of my defined markets? The system is going to then render the experience for that buyer. So again, let's say I haven't defined that France market and I have my North America market. In this situation, if I don't have France defined, they're going to get the North America market experience because I've configured my backup region to be Canada. A key piece to keep in mind, though, is the buyer still cannot complete a checkout. So all of your requirements for shipping zones and such are still in place. Another big piece to think about is the configuration of your markets. So we chatted a little bit with catalogs about like it's possible for markets to have the same rank. And if they're the same rank, we take the lowest price. Well, this is true not just for catalogs, it's true for all of our customizations. Depending on how you've configured your markets, we could treat them in essence like siblings. So in this scenario, I have North America configured, but then I have Canada, US, and Canada, Mexico. Well, in that regard, we as a system can't say Canada, US is more specific than Canada, Mexico, because there's only two countries in both. And so the way the platform will resolve is it will say, hey, here are customizations. Here's your list of markets, but M1 and M2 are the same priority from our perspective. So what that means is each customization will then take that and resolve in the most logical way that they can. So catalogs is not too much of an issue because you're just going to get the catalog for both M1 and M2. For currency, we're going to look and we're going to try and persist the currency that makes the most sense for that locale. But, again, if you have a situation where maybe for some reason you've configured to use US dollars and Mexican pesos, well, we don't have a locale to pull from. And so in that regard, we're just going to pick the first alphabetically, which means your Canadian buyers are going to be checking out in pesos. So how do you do that? How do you avoid these scenarios to make sure the system is really predictable? Have very strict logical hierarchies. So avoid having Canada or a member in multiple branches of your market structure. Another thing to consider is managed markets. So last year, if you guys recall, we rebranded Markets Pro to Managed Markets. This gives you the ability to really utilize and expand your business quickly and easily internationally. It's got things where you can now interact with per market activation. So again, you can be even more specific where previously when you opted in, it was all or nothing. Now you can say, okay, I want these specific markets to be managed. And this is, again, when we think through international expansion, you may have controls where you're like, yeah, maybe I am a Canadian merchant. I want to go ahead and control my Canada and US markets, but everything overseas, I want to actually go ahead and opt in to manage markets. You have more control granularly at that level. You also are going to have access to some responders. So depending on which markets you've activated, you'll be able to set different controls. And then this continues to be a US only offer, but it is something, again, just to consider as you're interacting with the new markets experience. So all in all, hopefully that was helpful and we were able to cover quite a bit of topics talking about the new markets experience and excited for you all to dig in. Have a great day.